Julio Jones is potentially on the sell market for the NFL, but is he a dynasty buy or sell at this point? We're also going to discuss what your go-to dynasty trade response says about you. Personality test there, dynasty trades plus quotes from the Shark Pool Dynasty forum there for footballguys.com. That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I'm your host, Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And right off the bat, Julio Jones. Could he be on the move from Atlanta? We're going to be talking about his dynasty value here because we're in the heart of spring, summertime, where it's all about rookies. It's about pretty roster, and a 32, 33-year-old wide receiver, albeit an all-timer in terms of what he's done so far in his career, is not really a part of that dynasty plan, Jordan. So here we are, and he has a pretty wide range of cost in the marketplace. Sometimes firsts are possible. Sometimes you get them for a second or two, and beyond that critical 15, 16 overall sort of jump point, big teardrop potentially in your rookie draft if that has not occurred yet. So moving pieces here. What is sort of your exploratory take here on Julio Jones, and what's your NFL take as well? Because if he's in Atlanta or somewhere else, that could impact what we see over the next 1 to 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it definitely impacts what we see. Listen, I still think he's got difference-making upside. And you sort of look at the range that he is going, and you look and you say, hey, who can tilt my league? And the answer is Julio. And so when he's in the late 20s, early 30s in startup drafts, I mean, you're going 8th, 9th, 10th round. I think the floor is going to fall a little bit in terms of his draft cost because of all this stuff. Listen, that's a really intriguing upside shot, especially in a range where like the hit rate there isn't as high as people give it credit for, right? You might look in that range, and if that's, 30-40% hit rate, that's pretty aggressive. That's pretty nice. And you're getting a guy that his hit can be really high. And so that's the thing with Julio, I think, is you still have top 12 upside with him. I've been interested in who could trade for him. So there's been a lot of teams bandied around. I think the most interesting one is the Chargers. And I think the Chargers are Tennessee because they both have options that I think would be, would make him still give him plenty of volume, and especially Tennessee. And, so I think that there's still opportunities out there for him that don't necessarily tank his value. There are fallout implications. What happens with Calvin Ridley? I think this probably helps him to some degree. I'm not sure he can go up all that much in terms of volume, but it probably makes Pitts more reliant, the offense more reliant on Pitts to start than he could maybe get phased in if he was behind Julio. But I think it's definitely worth poking around in your leagues and sort of looking at some of the trade market, just because this is a type of situation that can move somewhat quickly, and you don't want to be left behind. So that would be sort of the angle that I would take with it all. If you need a bridge, he's a pretty attractive bridge in a 1 to 2 year window.
Yeah, I think about Julio almost in the lens where, remember, sometimes late in the offseason, we get like a Leonard Fournette last offseason, right? Mm-hmm. Floating out there, and he crashes the depth chart. So you were discussing it from Julio's perspective. I think if he goes somewhere, his floor is still going to be pretty high. And frankly, I mean, when you're talking about a startup valuation in the wide receiver 30s, probably, as you mentioned, with someone just of his age, I think you have to look at two things. First would be, how does he affect the players on the team he's going to? Because he's going to get largely his. Now, maybe not the volume he's used to removed from 2020, where he missed some time, had some partial games. We're kind of used to that Julio management during the season that you see questionable, game time decision. Sometimes he plays in that and he's a relative non-factor. Sometimes he goes for 11 for 150 under the same tag. So we're used to this. And if you're playing the aggregate, not a best ball, but you're playing the I want big time potential, I want winners actually is the Mike Singletary line. So if you're looking at your lineup like that, Julio putting up, a couple catches and then the exits, again, it's the aggregate game of what happened. Did he put up impact 5 or 6 times? Big time performances. And you got to play him to get that, to encapsulate all of that. So when you're playing that sort of mentality, he fits pretty well. Because again, if he's playing, you're playing him. It's sort of the always play your studs mentality there. But one thing that I wanted to mention about his dynasty value is if you're buying Julio Jones right now, and I do think it's worth exploring, because if you can throw out a second, if your rookie draft hasn't happened yet, and you're giving a second and a guy that you're thinking about flipping that you don't think is going to be startable this year for Julio Jones, what I would say though is you're getting into the business. And like a Larry Fitzgerald over the last 3-4 years, I'm thinking back to guys like Tony Gonzalez late on in his career. You are not, or Steve Smith, you are basically in this till the end, I would say, because when you have players like this, and you may already have existing players other than Julio Jones on your rosters, that you can't think about that roster spot in a liquidity and I have a lot of flexibility to exit whenever I want type stuff. You might have other players like that, but Julio Jones, we're kind of getting there with Adam Thielen, for example. Fitzgerald's been there for a while. Basically, older wide receivers. Sometimes you get running backs that are 28, 29, same sort of thing. You're just going to have them because you're never going to validate. If you have Julio Jones now, you're starting him this year. You're not going to get to November probably and be like, yeah, give me that contending second. Like, no, even if you just missed the playoffs, you're going to be like, no, we're going to run this back. I can still start him next year. I like him. He's an historic player. And even if he's now lineup wise, my wide receiver 2, 3, 4, then that's still good for my contending team. And for 210, 305, I'm not bailing for that. And the price is only going down. And the market of who's interested is only getting smaller. It's not quite that bad, but when you get into the season, you get into next offseason, he's going to be a very acquired taste. So while I've seen some trades for late firsts, this is it. I mean, maybe there's a rogue deal or two if he's balling out in October. Someone gives a late first because of injuries and they're a strong team and they just want to add him. And they're like, 111, 112, I project for my pick. I'll give that. Give me another guy I can start right now. But just know if you're getting into the business, you're going all the way. This is going to be a family business all the way until you're probably going to hold him till retirement because frankly, even Larry Fitzgerald, like a couple years ago, trade that for a third. You'd rather have sort of the depth, right? I mean, the PPR volume sort of stuff. So that's what I would say is know what you're getting into. I would not pay a first. I think if you do pay a first, what do we always say? You want to wait on a producer. And again, I think there's still going to be better bets. Like I've been making Keenan Allen for late first bets, or I've been getting Tyler Lockett plus. So I think there's other ways to do it if you're doing that during your rookie draft. But if you are thinking of trading for Julio Jones and your speculative offers right now, just wait. What if you aren't competitive on October? What if that other team goes into a complete tailspin and Julio Jones is on the block and they'll take your contending second and a marginal player because they just want out and his production actually hurts them in season for their draft position. So consider all these things, and this one moment in time is typically not the last chance you ever get at a certain player where it's like they draw the line in the sand. I want your 22 first or nothing else. Well, let's circle back. Let's circle back a few different times. Let's see if that's your last and final offer.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the other thing too is I think he's one of those players where you can slide around the board, right? Maybe you can use him in a slide back situation. If you're looking in what I would consider like the PS portion of the rookie drafts, the post sermon portions of the rookie draft, and you can sort of slide back, and maybe it's a later second or something like that. You go. You slide back and arrange like that's an interesting idea as well, right? So those would be sort of the things I would look to do. Let me ask you this: like I've used the analogy how he's my 97 Grand Am before, but what do you say to the argument that you're basically creating an illiquid situation, right? You're taking a guy that frankly you're probably never going to be able to include in a bigger package, or you're going to have a limited, maybe you could, but you're going to have a much more limited cast of characters on the other side of a Julio trade than you would maybe in an equal an equally priced asset. If you're sort of looking, if it's in a startup draft for a guy like Bateman, for example, who's going in the same type of range, you're creating a more illiquid situation with a guy like Julio. What's your sort of approach in that situation?
Well, I think you're going to have two parts of your roster, or maybe even three. One is going to be, because let's face it, if you have your entire roster of either one, it's not good. If you have an entire roster of liquid assets, that would be what? Rookie picks, maybe a couple cornerstone young players that pretty much everyone universally covets. And then maybe some upside guys that, again, still are in that kind of protective little bubble early in their career window where they haven't proven or disproven. It's like, it's like Schrodinger's cat. So I think that you're going to be in a situation. So that's not good because you probably are not going to have a team good enough to contend. And then if you have all proven profiles and older producers, you've got no outs. And typically those are the ones that over a 2 to 3 year window that you always think you're contending. You trade your picks for more players like that. Eventually you fall off the cliff. Eventually you have to rebuild your picks, start over. We've seen that before. I mean, teams go out, maybe they have a 2 to 3 year window of a lot of veteran producers. I got great deals in the startup draft. And then in year 3, year 4, they kind of recycle and start over and start a rebuilding process. I remember 5-10 years ago, that was a really common in Dynasty that teams would cycle, and try to win a title or two early on, which is difficult to pinpoint, but you could build a redraft style team that looks pretty good on paper. Now, whether it works out or not. So I think you want to blend though. So, you can still draft well, have your targets in rookie drafts, not give away your first round picks, try to get an extra one from now and then, so draft well, work the waiver wire, but you can still have 4, 5, 6 players that are back half of their career, not super liquid. Maybe they're a fringe first round equivalency, but maybe second, third round, if you're actually trying to shop them around in the marketplace, but they're valuable to you. And so I think having that combo, I mean, I look at some of these teams where I'm pretty old at wide receiver. I might have Mike Evans and Allen Robinson and Brandon Cooks and, guys I've had for a while.
Really pushing them into the retirement age there.
But what I'm saying is they're getting to illiquid, right? I mean, we're already seeing the fall for some of these guys. And but if you mix in and you're like, well, I have I have Brandon Ayuk and now I added Rashad Bateman, so you might have 6 guys, 4 on the older side, but if you got a couple profiles you like mixed in there, you're okay. You're okay. And it's not that you're pressing the envelope at that position at your annual rookie draft or anything, but I think, especially a wide receiver, I'm becoming a lot less sensitive to the whole, I got a bunch of 27, 28 plus guys. I'm not okay, I have them because I think the market at various points has underrated them. Right. And they're the types I'm not typically trading away. So to me, it's a specialized case, just like in Superflex with a 36, 37-year-old quarterback. I tend to value that a little more than the market. So it's not a surprise that I have, a cross section of those types on my roster. So I've never really had a team. It'd be an interesting thought exercise to kind of go through and see what your oldest team is and kind of see, is this too much? And that might be a test case for, is that something in a couple years, or do you keep, trying to stay on the early side, maybe figure out a way to get an extra future first round pick or something, just to kind of, grease the wheels to rebuilding on the fly or reloading on the fly, as I like to say. So it'd be interesting to see if there actually is within our portfolios or whatever, a team that is kind of deemed too old or illiquid, as you mentioned. But I don't think I'm all that close to that line yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm working on a theory about the doing some research, bigger research. This is big research time. I don't know about you, but you're not really, if you're not doing startup drafts.
June is I was just thinking about it. June is like the lightest month. If you ever go on a cruise and shut off your internet connection, June is really the month, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, as an analyst, as a writer, as a Dynasty GM, all these things. I mean, it's really the lightest. And frankly, we could use a little break before the ramp up. So
it's good. You got to get out on the bike and and ride up some hills and where there's no reception. But yeah, I'm working on a theory about basically some of the market value stuff, and it's interesting because I think some of the trades that we try and make. So if it's trying to trade profiles or trying to arbitrage profiles, I think it's really something we're capable of doing at running back, maybe at quarterback. I think we largely have it kind of, we understand sort of the profiles to target and at quarterback, and a lot of times they're undervalued, right? We kind of understand how to work some of the value stuff at the running back position. What's interesting is when we try and work that game at wide receiver, right, you can't, all of our target guys are sort of become, mid position, multi-hit guys, it's your Evans, it's your Allen, it's your Robinson, it's your Cooper, it's that range of the position, which we know historically are undervalued. And it's sort of interesting because it's tough to arbitrage off that because you don't really want to go up, because if you go up, you're going to be paying more for probably an asset that's going to underperform what you have. And then, so it's an interesting, that sort of sitting in that range of the position, sort of like you said, where you don't necessarily worry about being illiquid. I actually think that's really right. And it's something I've come around to more and more. I'll say too, as a beginning Dynasty player, the thought of someone retiring on my team was horrifying to me. I thought that was an absolute sign of Dynasty failure.
Nightmare. You lose a player. I lose a player that I didn't trade and let him rot on somebody else's team for the last 6 months.
Correct. I mean, and I did that not that long ago with Tom Brady, right? So there are these.
Did you say Tom Brady retired? No, you just said he retired off your roster.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I was like, oh, there's no way, I get a second, and that was like 2 years ago, and it's like, you just kind of kick yourself, and
look at how many had Andrew Luck retire off their roster. Oh, too soon? Still too soon. I had Drew Brees. I still have a team that I haven't had to shed enough roster spots yet, but yeah, I'm recycling off. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I've become less and less worried about. And I do think there is a tiering to your team, which is, you got your core assets, then you got your really elite assets, then you got your guys that are more contributor types. And those contributor types, like, they kind of come and go. And then below that, I would consider more of like your situational guys. But I think that, once you sort of get below that core group, whether that's 6, 7, 8, depending on your format, obviously you want to have 20 of them, but in most leagues it's 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, depending on how you define it. You get past that, it's very much flexible, and it tends to become a little bit more redraft. So if you lose someone in that range, like, it should not be debilitating, and if it is, you got bigger problems. So that's kind of my case for I don't much worry about that anymore.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about losing someone to retirement, I mean, I would think it's this equivalent to expecting a big breakout from somebody, and it doesn't occur. So what are you doing now? What is the next step? Because let's play this out. Let's say you're in Superflex and Tom Brady is one of your top 2 quarterbacks. He probably is. And then you're churning him out this year. Let's say at some point, but you're going into the year, he's a critical part of my team and my lineup for right now. And then he suddenly retires. And we can use the same thing about Drew Brees that just happened, to Phillip Rivers to a lesser degree. So when you lose them, here's the thing. The next day, you're not starting a team. I mean, Andrew Luck, if I recall, was in like August, right? I mean, so that was a little closer to home and feet to the fire of like, all right, I'm scrambling. He was a core guy. Now what? But like when you get a Drew Brees early on, you have that giant window, and no, that doesn't mean you spend 2 rookie picks on a quarterback. That's not what we're talking about. But what it means is you have a long runway until you're actually setting a lineup. So to be saying that this is critical, I mean, you can explore, again, you have the waiver wire, as I always explain to people, but you also have, yes, the rookie draft, but the rookie draft as a tool. You could be using that to trade up or down, acquire veterans, and then you also can get all the way to the season, see what you got. Okay, I am light, but I think I'm competitive. Let me go after somebody. So you still have a lot of checkpoints and avenues that I think people think in, as we sit late May, got to fix my lineup, and that could be dating all the way back to February when someone retired off of your team. But that really shouldn't be fearful, again, because a lot of times when someone's in the twilight, and I think Ben Roethlisberger is a perfect example. He might be going for a song where he is a live, able-bodied. Well, I know I rounded up a little bit about the able-bodied part, but the point is he's on a team with good weapons around him, and there's a reasonable ceiling floor combo there, fantasy-wise, that if people are assuming this is his last year, it may very well be. But if you're paying like a 3rd-round rental price for a starting, viable, good track record quarterback that is in their twilight, but if he plays, like, first of all, I think you win that trade. If you get a full year of Ben Roethlisberger, you have him in your lineup, quality depth, etc. for a third. But like, I think back to Breeze and Brady, when you were buying them years ago, people were already heavily discounting them. Every year they play, it's like a printing press. And Brady's still a part of that. People were trading him for seconds last year in Superflex because they were like, oh, last offseason, oh, he's done, and all this. When you bet on all-timers to do all-timer things, you generally benefit, So make sure your hold is rock solid and high for that. And as long as they're still kicking around, I think it is a very viable, as you mentioned. It might be your third tier of player, but that mix of redrafty bridge guys, older, they're lineup centric. Trading is kind of off the table, but acquiring them is a little bit of an underrated market, I feel, in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, and I'll say one other thing too, and just cross the sports a little bit. We're seeing the age curve with all of sports being pushed, right? And we're seeing it with some of the stuff LeBron James is doing in terms of all-time minutes. You just saw Phil Mickelson win the major for the first time someone at 50 has done it. I think that was like 2 years older than anyone has ever won a major before. That was a long time ago. You're seeing it with Brady, right? You're seeing it with some of these guys where these, Serena Williams, they're pushing the envelope out further, and those are all timers, or
science and healthcare, and I mean, keeping people active longer,
right?
Higher levels longer, right?
All that technology and all the all the food stuff that a lot of these people are doing, and and I actually heard Dirk Nowitzki talking about basically how he changed his career recently on a podcast, and a lot of it's food related and some of the stretching stuff. And as we sort of see this, the idea that some of these guys, be careful not to sell too early, because someone at 35, that they still could have a 5-year window. You look at a guy like Rodgers, where there could still be a 5-year window. That wouldn't shock me, considering where he is. Stafford, right? He might push for all-time passing yardage leader, with how much longevity he could have. All of those things I think are really interesting, and we're sort of seeing that the bounds of science being pushed. And I think it's something that we sort of have to appreciate and maybe bend the age curves a little bit further on down the line.
Yeah, and I think you have to consider what type of player. I think we talked before about, the tactician, the guy that isn't winning with overall overt physical gifts, meaning size, speed, explosion. But, if you're a productive wide receiver into your 30s, you're doing a lot of things right? It's not just because you're not getting by on straight gas anymore, and just like, I'm bullying you. Like, that's not... Like you don't make it 10 plus years in the league and that's all you have. Right. And in quarterback, I would remind folks that the NFL rules, and it's tailored. The game is tailored to, if you're in the pocket, we keep going above and beyond to protect you. This is your haven. Yes, you'll take sacks. Yes, you'll take hits, but it's nothing like it was 10, 20 years ago. And beyond that, I mean, it was a wrestling match. So forget about it. But when you get outside the pocket, you are at risk. So those types of quarterbacks, I believe, are more durable than the others. Guys like Phillip Rivers, they know when to get it out. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, take your losses, throw the incomplete pass, move on to the next play. That is highly durable in today's NFL. And that's why we're seeing, like you mentioned, everything medical and technology related, but also rules and setup of the NFL, that it's going to be conducive to more 40-plus-year-old quarterbacks playing well and being productive for us inside the pocket. And yeah, they may not run for more than 100 or 150 yards in any season, but they can win from the pocket because they've been doing it and they've seen almost everything the NFL has to offer defensively. All right, reminder, this is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 55 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And if you're into shows like this, you're a serious fantasy player. And what does that mean? It means you're trying to win your league, save time, and get the edge. And the Football Guys premium membership is the way to do that and get that edge, because what you want to do is have all those winning decisions take less time. It's valuable to you. You're probably in multiple leagues. My Football Guys. That's going to sync all your leagues there. You're going to have all the award-winning information you need. And right now, there's an early bird discount that's available. You can go up to the top right-hand corner, join now of the homepage. And again, you're going to get all the same league-winning information. We're less than 2 months away from the hammer, which is the paywall, coming down across the board over there at Football Guys, and you're not going to want to miss it. So all that content you're seeing coming through, we've got the team pages, player pages, all of that in-depth content. A drove after the NFL draft of rankings are up, whether it's Dynasty, redraft, at the various positions. We're actually going 250 deep in overall. So whatever your type of draft is, the rankings go super deep this year with the Football Guys status, player comments, and we also have a number of collaborative pieces. You don't want to miss out on any of this. So at a minimum, you need to get over there, get on the email list, and then you also want to join now for the premium membership. We'll do the work, and you do the winning.
Yeah, you have your commissioner piece out, right? You have your commissioner series.
We're going through. There's about 7 or 8 different pieces. We're about halfway through that. So again, if you're new to being a commissioner, whether it's Dynasty or redraft, there's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, we've had a lot of collaborative pieces. I think we're going through the most impactful, most interesting rookie series across all the positions, not just at the skill positions. And one thing that I wanted to highlight, which I always enjoy, you of course have the Bloom 100 that's pre and post NFL draft that goes super deep, includes IDP. But Gene Bramble also has a really great graphic and write-up of his combined rookie board that was out earlier this month. If you have especially IDP drafts coming up and getting a sense of the IDPs and where they sit versus the offensive players for your rookie draft. Let's discuss some trading, and obviously have Julio in here. So this first one is 14 team, a little bit of IDP, so that bumps up the rookie picks a little bit. We've got Julio Jones for Mike Davis, Antonio Brown, a 4th, and then a 2nd next year.
Man, I I gotta tell you a funny story. So I was in a trade negotiations, and someone was like, I was talking about Mike Davis, and someone was like, who? And I was like, yeah, the guy that finished running back 12 last year and is the starting running back for Atlanta. And they were like, I haven't seen anything that suggests he's the starting running back for Atlanta. And I was like, oh. I was like,
I thought he was still in Carolina. I didn't know.
That's the guy backing up Reggie Bonifant, right?
I thought he was going to get pushed by Chuba Hubbard.
I mean, this is an interesting one because I think the upside shot is. I actually think the Mike Davis side's the two-way go, because you get the insulation on the pick. Yeah, you got the insulation on the pick. You got Mike Davis, and I think I missed a piece in there, but I'm taking the Mike Davis pick side of this one.
Antonio Brown is sneaky. Like the
Antonio
more I dug into this, I wrote up Tampa Bay for Football Guys, and Antonio Brown, when he played, he was ahead of Chris Godwin. He was right there. It was like a 3-headed committee there in terms of wide receiver 1, 2, 3. And Brown really did get featured. He was absolutely lineup viable. And so he's a bridge guy, one that shouldn't be ignored. And Mike Davis, again, the upside is huge. And that future 2nd in IDP, do not ignore that pick, even in a 14-team league where it could be deep in the 20s. So that's 3 pretty good pieces, and I think you have to move off of Julio Jones for that. And I certainly wouldn't pay that because, frankly, in that rookie draft range, late 1st, early 2nd, Mike Davis and Julio Jones should not be super far apart. I prefer Julio Jones if you're asking me who has the most impact, most likely with the highest probability over the next, say, 2 or 3 seasons when you look at their respective profiles. But Brown and a 2nd added on there, that's a lot of richness for not really knowing Julio Jones' true ceiling of usage, depending on what team he goes to. And again, just being relatively illiquid. I mean, Antonio Brown, similar age, highly productive player. Obviously, it's a pretty stacked up chart, but they're going to throw the ball a lot in Tampa Bay. So I think that's a pretty sneaky side to get Julio Jones there.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What seasonal finish, what running back would really surprise you out of Mike Davis in terms of high
or low? High finish. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this is points or points per game or just whatever. Like how does
whatever,
he finish?
Right.
That would surprise me on the high end. I would say above, if he was above a mid running back 1, that would surprise me.
Okay.
Just because I think there's a lot of mouths to feed there. I do think, especially because I think Julio Jones could absolutely stay. But I don't think their defense is going to be very good. I think they're going to need to throw the ball. Is it really going to be a funnel to Mike Davis for targets? So I think you could have some scenarios there where I have a hard time seeing top 3 to 5, even though we're like the most bullish out there on what Mike Davis could be. That still would be pretty surprising considering the level. You have McCaffrey coming back, Barkley coming back, and a number of other players that are sort of on a big time potential trajectory there.
Yeah, but I think the top 6, that a running back 6 finish, I think people would be surprised by that. But I think it's, if you just told me that he survives the season and plays all the games, right? I mean, that's going to put him in shouting distance of that just by aggregation. So,
other than a Leonard Fournette type scenario, of like someone randomly being out there in late August. I mean, really, I don't know if Todd Gurley is super scary if he were to go back there. I do think Le'Veon Bell would be absolutely a factor, but those are the only 2 guys kind of floating where you say, that's it. Outside of someone getting released or traded or whatever, that's it. They give a 2-year deal to Mike Davis. We're getting more and more. This train's going. That it feels like the play here. We've got one other. One other Julio deal, FFPC and a rebuild. I always find that funny because it's so shallow. Who's truly rebuilding? Yeah. So this was selling Julio Jones for Trey Sermon and KJ Hamler.
Oh man. So I like KJ Hamler sort of theoretically, not in FFPC.
Not in FFPC.
But man, the Julio for Sermon angle. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's basically treating him as a mid to late first, and it's a midish first and start one and a later.
It's start one.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically getting, I don't know. That's basically like 106
to 108.
Yeah, right. I'd probably take the Sermon angle of that and reset the clock.
Oh yeah, and I think one of these guys has a chance to be a top 25 dynasty asset at some point in the next 12 months or just in general. And Julio Jones is far removed from that. So this is the classic liquid versus illiquid, and frankly, I mean we might see a cross section of the season pop from Sermon that's enough where you're like, oh well, even in a 1-year scenario, like Sermon actually provided me something at maybe a more critical position. So yeah, I think that's sort of the perfect and best case outcome. I don't think Hamler matters. I don't know if you even keep him into week 1 or cuts or whatever. So, but yeah, Sermon and a piece, is sort of a best case scenario, like we were talking about, of somewhere in the back half of round 1. All right. So we talked about dealing back in the draft a little bit and potentially getting other players. So a player that's lost a little bit of luster since last year is Laviska Shenault. So this is a 1 quarterback league. Trading 202 for 211 and Laviska Shenault.
It's a 1 quarterback league, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow, it's like you're already in the zone of death, basically. It's
quarterback land,
right? Yeah, it's like okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll take the shot on Laviska Shenault at that cost. I don't think you're losing much, to be honest with you. Moving from 202 to 211, I'd be interested to sort of see what was there. I wouldn't probably make that, unless it's on the clock. But I don't think the difference between 202 and 211 is all that much. And you're getting basically an additional kind of player of the same ilk that you would take at 202.
You're still at day two wide receiver, maybe have a top 15 quarterback in the late second versus the early second, but you're not getting your pick, obviously. And doesn't that feel like an arbitrage? I mean, even if you like Rondell Moore or Terrace Marshall, I mean, you're getting Shenault, who's a year who actually posted a season that says he's not on the bus track, based on what he did. And now you're getting 211. And frankly, now you kick it. You got Shenault, you got 211. And now what do you do at 211? Maybe you trade that back and you get a future second or something, or 211 for, I got quote unquote stuck at 210 and I traded it for Hunter Henry, in a league where I needed some tight end help. So you have options, even though you're moving back to add other players or future picks. So it's not over. And I think Chenault's closer to 202 straight up. So, I mean, again, you're kind of getting the other pick to play around with for free. But yeah, unless someone falls, like a Bateman is probably gone. I mean, again, you're really in a zone of death. I think you called that.
Yeah.
The tier line of death.
Yeah. It's literally a red line on my rookie board.
One player that we haven't talked about we've talked about him a little bit, but here's another Cam Akers trade, one quarterback. Now, is this an arbitrage, or do you think this is not enough considering maybe what the range of outcomes for the market is over the next 6 to 12? We got Cam Akers for Miles Sanders, a 22 first, and then a 23 second. So you're getting Sanders and a first and a second for Akers.
And is that you said super flex too, right?
One quarterback.
Man, I'll tell you, you noted in a piece recently at Football Guys that you thought that Cam Akers was overvalued. And I said, my comment was, I can't believe that I've heard that. Right? I mean, it's just that have been one of the most bullish people, the most bullish person on Cam Akers that I know, and to hear you sort of say
startup,
that.
Jordan. First round startup for a guy that's had a few good games.
I know.
What are we doing?
I know. So it's notable that, cost is everything.
I've grown. I've matured, Jordan. I know that there is a range of outcomes and not to consider anything guaranteed in this world, in this game. So
yes.
Everyone's viewing Akers as like, what? I guess easy. Just walk to the finish line of a top 6 season.
Right.
Apparently. Whew.
Right. Yeah, give me all the Darrell Henderson this year. I get this trade. I'm just not a huge Miles Sanders fan in terms of his profile.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd love for a parallel player to do this with.
Who's parallel to Miles Sanders? Like who would make this better, but in a similar ilk for you?
I mean, Antonio Gibson's within shouting distance of him, price-wise.
Would you do it for Mixon? David Montgomery?
See, Montgomery should be going ahead of Sanders by basically any reasonable calculation. I don't know why he's not.
No. I know you do it for Jacobs in a first. I know you would do that.
God, yeah, I would run.
I think that's in play. I mean, I think that's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sanders is the one where I have him and Mixon are the two where I wish I could find out, like, fast forward me to December and then have me come all the way back. Those are two that, they're sort of mid-career, mid to back half of their prime window here. They really haven't done enough to date to warrant some of the attention, some of the smoke that they get, or assumptions of what they've done. And I'd really like to know if they have their best season yet in 2021. And I really, I have pause with both of them saying that. So
yeah, if you put Mixon in this deal, I think
you have to do it, right?
I think you got to do that.
Because you've talked about Mixon with like Montgomery of just the window where no one's really coming to take their job. Like it's pretty unlikely. So you got a couple year window here and you still have outs. Like they're still post. Even if Akers ends up having a great year, that you still have outs with like a first and again, with a productive running back that's not overly old. Like, you can still salvage like, I lost, but I didn't, like, it wasn't tragic.
Yeah. I think
if you're wrong.
Whereas you could, the person getting Akers in this, it could be a horrendous outcome. I mean, when we talk about, hit rates and stuff like that, he's a 50-50 guy at this point, being treated essentially like an 80-20 guy. Yeah. And that is a lot to ask. It's just, and I understand he's got upside. Like Stafford's got top 6 MVP odds and all this stuff, right? Which is quizzical that his dynasty prices have moved. But
it makes feel a little Mixon like, where it's like, well, why didn't he go higher in the NFL draft? Why, it's later second. Well, and we're looking at Mixon, right? Of a guy that, he was round 1 guy. No, he wasn't. And Akers, he was drifting in the fit. He barely went ahead of Gibson and Dillon. So. Right. Let's not mix this, with Taylor and Edwards-Helaire and guys that went a good amount higher. So just be careful. And again, who's looking at the guy who's the biggest 102 in rookie draft proponent last year? Well, now it's getting a little hot in here. It's getting a little hot under the collar. And I've cashed 3 or 4 shares this offseason because I've been moving up. I've been moving up in this world, the Christian McCaffreys, and I've been getting some big boy things done. So I'm not saying you trade for anything, and I'm not sure this is even the type of deal I would do. So just know it's all about the right deal. But when you can get 2 or 3 quality pieces, and one of them being a running back that basically straight up has a better profile of what they've done so far, and it's not like they're 27, You need to be open to that. I think no matter how much you like him, if you went to Florida State and you love, you love 21-year-old running backs, you love the Rams, you love what they're going to do this year. Even if you have all of that, just go and knock on a few doors is what I would say.
Yeah. Swift Plus, right? All those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's do some quotes from the Dynasty forum over there at the Football Guys. Shark Pool. Back to what we're talking about trade offers that at the top of the show. And this is a good one. We didn't mix it in as a feature topic or anything, but I hate people that, and they're referencing ignoring trade offers for days or weeks at a time. And it says all leagues have a couple of these guys. I'd rather have someone just say, quote unquote, go F yourself than ignore me. So I will start this by just saying, I like when I get comments because that is information. That is intel. That is someone giving me information. Hopefully it's not just I hate you, but that's the way that you, but again, we're not in the world of a home league where you know all the people in your league, you know them well, you've been in the league for 10 years, you know their tendencies, and like you're friends with them. Like we're largely playing with strangers. And frankly, you're in enough leagues that it's not like you remember everything about everybody all the time so you're getting information. And when they respond to things like, I value so-and-so higher, or I need a first round pick added on, or I'm actually looking for quarterback, not running back, anything they tell you is helpful. So I appreciate comments. And I will say when things float out there, I'm a little less sensitive to that than others, but I can see how that would be annoying when they just sit out there and you think, whether they saw it or not, that you basically have an inactive owner as part of an inactive league.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I'm less sensitive to it because usually I'm doing a trade barrage of
trade arbitrage. I like that. Arbitrage of trading.
Yeah, an arbitrade. So I'm doing a barrage of trades typically. So I'm not all that sensitive to it lingering out there. I do have a league that's beyond annoying in terms of every time you send an offer, there's like 10 of those people in the league where it never gets a response. So they're all sitting out there. That is annoying. But you got to pivot to offering to other people and just know that, that's the situation. I do try and, I've had offers linger out there, and there's, undoubtedly you just miss them sometimes. You miss them coming through, especially during rookie draft time. You just get hammered with emails. But no, I try and be responsive, and I sort of get, I get when people sort of let them linger, but I do think you follow up on it, right? Just, hey, did you see this? Right. Because I think that's something that people can, if the person doesn't have a habit of doing it, just follow up on it and, just check and see.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm working an angle, I'm really trying to sell a certain player. I got a little window here. A lot of times that's in season, where it's Wednesday through Saturday. You really don't have a big window there, but I will give some latitude. Right now we're in a pretty slow period for the next 4 to 6 weeks. If something floats out there for 3-4 days, it's not timely. But yet, when you're on the clock or you're trying to get to on the clock in a rookie draft, that's when you kind of hope everyone's dialed in. There's certain points of the calendar where it's like, come on, you're in this league, and I'm not saying you have to respond within 10 minutes. And frankly, there is a cross section of the league that does that during rookie draft or a start draft. So that's always appreciated to get that early response, because you can move on or you can send them another offer that's different. But when you have an 8-hour pick clock in a rookie draft and you're trying to trade down or something, and you sent out a bunch of offers, and there's 4, 5, 6 of the league mates that don't, they haven't even responded to any of them, and now you're up against the clock, and it's been 3 or 4 hours. You're not trying to hold anything up, but you're trying to get something done. Like, it is a pretty hard scenario where it's like, come on. This is really, a rookie draft is going to be over in 2 or 3 days probably. Right. So it's like, come on. This is the time where, when you can, every hour, check your phone. You're literally just checking your email. So it's just, to me, it's a little far-fetched that critical moments like that. This is kind of why you're in the league. This is why it's fun, is moments like that. And obviously when we get to the season. All right, next one. This is a good one, because propaganda is a very charged word here. Quote unquote, tight end premium is just propaganda, referencing 1.5 PPR when impacting bigger trades.
I think it matters. What we did, we did a research project you were part of in the off season, and it includes, it was AOD 2021, and it includes some tight end premium stuff that a different contributor, not you, contributed. You could have contributed it. You did something different. But it opened my eyes to an idea basically about how to treat them. So it is complicated in terms of there's more to it than just boosting the scoring. It does matter about some of the ancillary positions in terms of, what the flex situation is, how viable it makes them flex wise. An uptick with where you start 3 wide receivers is more significant than an uptick where you start 2 wide receivers and then have flex spots. So that was notable. I think it begins to really matter when you get up to 2, or when you get, I think I play in one that's like 1.75 and it's got juiced yards too. So it basically operates as a 2. That's when it really starts mattering, because you get a ton of juice in terms of starting guys in the flex and doing that stuff. And you can really hammer guys. But I do think that just the boost from, 1 to 1.5, I don't think it's going to make all that much of a difference.
Yeah, I think that is sort of a low level baby steps. We're trying to make tight end matter more.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work. Like that's sort of like in quarterback, we're going to make 8-point passing touchdowns. Well, it's still a start 1.
Right.
I mean, so
right.
You want quarterbacks to matter, make it 2 mandatory.
Yeah.
You want tight ends to matter, make it 2 mandatory. Make it 2 with premium scoring as well. You want to see a paradigm shift of positional value, that's where you got to go. And I feel like we've had FFPC as one of them. They've been around for a while. And it was very, when it came out, they got tight end premium, right? And they got the dual flex. Well, to be fair, I mean, there are plenty of formats moving in a variety of more aggressive directions. You mentioned, I mean, you can have a premium yardage, for tight ends, in addition to a tiered system of PPR. You have a tiered system potentially of targets or point per first down. You put 2 mandatory. There's a number of things you can do to make it more value than just the 1.5, because unless you're affecting the lineup, as you said, you're basically talking about who is more viable and how many from each position for flex consideration.
Right. I don't know if you saw someone tweeted me asking me a question over the weekend, and it was like a 16 team start 2 tight end. It was like 2 PPR. It was like paging Chad Parsons.
I was made for that. Dream. How many backup tight ends can I stash? How many positional converts can I put on my taxi? Yes, please.
Can we make this a Debbie? Right, can we make this
exactly? Can we make it a Debbie so I can have all the college and potential middle school and high school tight end or wide receiver converts to tight end as well?
Yeah.
I love him, and I could be wrong, but I am betting Chris Godwin will never be top 5 again, and probably not top 10.
I concur.
But don't rule it out, and because while it's a pretty ambiguous situation, free agent 2022, so he's probably going to get paid. Now, will he be viewed as a number 1? I'm skeptical of that, but he does have one under the belt, is what I would say. So at least he's there in terms of we've seen it before in the perfect storm. All right, last one here.
Real quick trivia question. Who's the leading receiver from in terms of yardage from the 2014 NFL draft class? So that's a good class with like Beckham and
yeah. Well, Godwin was in there too, right?
No.
I'm just joking. He wasn't. All right, from the 2014. So that was the big one. It wasn't Marquise Lee. He's still kicking around though. I think he just got released from his last team. Probably his last team. Let's see. It's I feel like you're baiting me. Mike Evans.
Yeah, it's Mike Evans. You want to know how much he leads the rest of he leads number 2 by 1,200 yards.
Oh, okay.
So
I was thinking it's like 800
over a season. He leads him over by a season. You want to guess who number 2 is?
Allen Robinson.
Jarvis Landry. You want to guess who number 3 is?
Allen Robinson.
Brandon Cooks.
Oh my God, I forgot about Cooks.
This is amazing.
So Beckham isn't even. I mean, per game he's been a monster, but he's fallen off of late.
Yeah.
So Beckham's like 6th or 7th. 4. Okay.
Beckham's 4. Yeah, he's ahead of Adams and he's ahead of Allen Robinson.
Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot Adams in there. Yeah.
Notably number 7 on that list of that class near and dear to our heart, Smokey Brown. So
There he is. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
1,200 more yards than the rest of than anyone in that class. Just remarkable.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
brought up
but
Chris Godwin. I had to pivot. So
but hashtag low ceiling.
yeah, hashtag low ceiling.
Hashtag Hall of Famer coming up. Just get ready for all you haters.
Right. Hashtag Canton. Got it. Yep.
Okay, so last one here. I've kind of always thought that with all else equal, a pick around 105 was worth a pair of future firsts.
105 is typically the spot that I put a random future first. And then you sort of talk about a discount. If you can get, if it's start one, if you can get 2 future first, that's interesting for a 105 spot. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's an interesting thought. I'd have to do a little bit of math on it, but I would guess sort of over the long term, if you did the multiple future first for 105, I would bet it would be a plus EV bet.
Yeah, so you have the time value, which is always kind of sticky, depending on what the GM is thinking there. But yeah, I mean, because your odds of having one earlier and one later, or quote unquote rolling snake eyes, as I call it, where it's like one's 109 and one's 111 or something, so obviously that. But to me, it comes down to 105 because every class is not equal, right? I mean, you go back to last year, and 105 could have been Akers or Swift, pretty easily. So that is a different prism than 105 this year in a one QB is Javonte Williams. So to me, he's like, I don't like him as much is what I would say. So it is a pretty good profile early day 2. I get all that. But just him as a prospect, I just don't quite have that comfort level. So it also depends on, is there a good viable running back? Are you looking more at wide receiver? I mean, is that Kyle Pitts? I mean, it could be a variety of spectrums that go into that, but I do think that trading for future first, generally trading down, getting a future first, getting more chances in that, you're picking out the bingo numbers and letters to get, potentially elite picks for non-elite prices. I mean, I feel like that's the game you play. If you're a contending team, your picks are generally going to be late. I mean, even if you have a down year, you're talking like 105 for your pick or something, if you're good. And so how do you get early in the round? How do you get like a future Ezekiel Elliott or Jonathan Taylor, or how do you get players like that without doing some my first and 2 players and move up? Like, how do you actually just get the pick? Well, you got to get future first and you got to get poker chips. So I feel like this is kind of the way, if this year you're sitting at one of like, Jalen Waddle or Trey Sermon or whatever, but if you can trade that for like 111 and a future first, and then that 111 you can trade for the 111 you trade for a future first. Like, now you have chances. It's not your first. You're a good team. So if yours is going to be playoff, guess what? You got a little bit of chance that one or both of those picks are not playoff. So you got to take those cracks. And I'm the better team I am, the more aggressive I am with whatever I can do. Like, I'll trade if it's in season, I'll trade a player that I'm trying to flip and my first for someone's first that I think is non-playoff, and I got a chance now to get 101, 102. I mean, I got a chance for a big time pick because otherwise you're just not going to get it. And you got to take big swings at the pinata of variance and upside with those picks. So that's pretty much the only way is you got to look out 1 to 2 years, and you've got to take chances as a good team because frankly you can afford to.
We went hunting for future firsts in FFPC, right? I think we made 2 deals basically along the lines you described for future first. So we have 3 of them, and it was in that range. It was like, I don't see a difference maker. Let's sort of kick the can. And now we got 3 cracks at. And
shallow league is even more important, right? Because
absolutely,
and in FFPC where it's more random, right? In terms of like making the playoffs, not making the playoffs, and you're playing through for draft position and all those types of things. But yeah, shallow rosters. What are you looking for? I mean, the first 8 to 10 players in your roster matter, and everybody else not as much.
Absolutely.
So you got to, and the players that are most likely to be there automatically are top 2-3 rookie picks, and everybody else maybe. You don't want to be super sticky, but yeah, I really like what we're doing. And you mentioned that about just getting future picks that it's going to make the team look good and the roster look good when you get there, and you can maybe make trades off of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in this episode, we discussed Julio Jones pretty in depth. We also discussed tight end premium, Chris Godwin a little bit, Laviska Shenault. We even mixed in that. Of course, we talked about Mike Davis, as we always figure out a way to do. A little bit about Miles Sanders profiles, Cam Akers as well in that vein, and of course, talking about rookie picks, trading, and future trade capital as well. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara, and until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.